श्रीमद् सद्गुरु सरकार की, श्रीमद् युगल सरकार की। दिवाकरी प्रपन्नाहं गुरु पादारविन्दयोः तस्य प्रेरणया तस्य दिव्यादेशं वदाम्यहम्। मन्नाथः श्री जगन्नाथो मद्गुरुः श्री जगद्गुरुः मदात्मा सर्वभूतात्मा कृपालु गुरवे नमः। ध्यानमूलं गुरोर्मूर्तिः पूजामूलं गुरोर्पदम् मन्त्रमूलं गुरोर्वाक्यम् भक्तिमूलं गुरोर्कृपा। यो ब्रह्माणं विदधाति पूर्वं यो वै वेदांश्च प्रहिणोति तस्मै तग्वंह देवमात्मबुद्धिप्रकाशं मुमुक्षुर्वै शरणमहं प्रपद्ये। Respected devotees of Sri Maharaj Ji, respected viewers, Radhe Radhe to you all. I have more volume. Bhatkat Thaki Gaye Paam Nath ab
Bhatkat Thaki Gaye Paam Nath
Bhatkat Thaki Gaye Paam Nath ab
Bhatkat Thaki Gaye Paam Nath
Bhatkat Thaki Gaye Paam Nath ab
Bhatkat Thaki Gaye Paam Nath
Bhatkat Thaki Gaye Paam Nath ab
Bhatkat Thaki Gaye Paam Nath
Bhatkat Thaki Gaye Paam Nath ab
Bhatkat Thaki Gaye Paam Nath
Puni Puni Janami Janami Dukh Payo
Puni Puni Janami Janami Dukh Payo
Nahi Payo Vaishnav Nath
Nahi payo Vaishnav Nath
Nahi Payo Vaishnav Nath ab
Nahi payo Vaishnav Nath
Bhatkat Thaki Gaye Paam
Thaki Paam Nath
Juti Lat Khat Pati Bani Tani Juti Lat Khat Pati Vani Tani
Lat Khat Pati Vani Tani
Nahi ab Uparam Nath ab
Nahi ab
Nahi ab Uparam Nath ab
Nahi ab Uparam Nath
Nahi payu Vishram Nath ab
Nahi payu Vaishnav Nath
Bhatkat Thaki Gaye Paam Nath ab
Bhatkat Thaki Paam Nath
Bhatkat Thaki Gaye Paam Nath ab
Bhatkat Thaki Paam Nath
Shukdev Paramhans told Parikshit in the Bhagavatam, Sukhaya karmani karoti loko nataihi sukham vanyaduparamam va vindeta bhuyastata eva dukkham yadatra yuktam bhagavan vadennah. Bhagavatam. That every individual soul endeavors for the attainment of happiness. Each and every action of every individual points in one direction only. And that direction is bliss, happiness, pleasure. He further tells Parikshit, Sarvesham api bhutanam ripasvatmaiva ballabha itare patya vittadyas tad ballabhatayaivahi. And the happiness that each and every individual desires. In other words, the ultimate motive behind each and every action is satisfaction of one's own self. Satisfaction of one's own self. This is another way of saying that no individual in this world bound by Maya, under the influence of Maya, can ever do anything for the happiness of another individual without self-interest or without an ulterior motive. It is virtually impossible. The fact is that we as individuals, we cannot think beyond the realm of our own desired personal happiness. Why? Why is that? Because we are bereft. We are devoid of true happiness, divine happiness. And until we receive that happiness or attain that happiness, we can only think and do anything for the satisfaction of our own inner self. Although on the surface, outwardly, it appears as though we are doing anything for any individual in our life. But the underlying motivation, reason is one and one only, our own self. We cannot think beyond ourselves. That's why we may have heard that love in this world is self-centered. It is selfish. This is the reality. Sri Maharaji tells us that everyone in the world suffers from a great delusion that other people are favorable toward them and love them. But what do the Vedas tell us? What are the Vedas? Nishvashitamasya Vedah. They're the very breath of God. So what do the Vedas tell us? Nava are patihu kamaya patihi priyo bhavatyat manastu kamaya patihi priyo bhavati. Nava are jaya yai kamaya jaya priya bhavatyat manastu kamaya jaya priya bhavati. Nava are putranam kamaya putraha priya bhavatyat manastu kamaya putranam priya bhavati. Nava are sarvasya kamaya sarvam priyam bhavatyatmanastu kamaya sarvam priyam bhavati. Atma vare drashtavyaha shrotavyo mantavyo nididhyasitavyo maitri. Vedas. It is an axiom in the world that no woman can love only for the happiness of her husband. No worldly husband can love only for the happiness of his wife. No worldly father can love his son only for his happiness. So when it is impossible for a worldly wife and a worldly husband, and likewise a worldly father and worldly son, to do anything for the happiness of each other, how could we expect for us to hope for unconditional love from other people in the world is more insane than the insanity of that person in a psychiatric hospital. Nevertheless, we strive for that kind of love. Moreover, we witness in our life. What do we witness? Disharmony, discord between families, friends, people in general. So the Vedas explain the science behind the stark truth. Aja mekam lohit shukla krishnam vahavihi prajah srijamanam sarupah ajo hyeko jushmano nushete jahatyenam bhukta bhoga majonyah ved. So the Vedas describe that this Maya is tricolored, black, red, and white, owing to its three gunas or modes, or you can say qualities of sattva, raj, and tam. Sattvic, rajas, and tamas. Sattvic being the mode of goodness, rajas being the mode of passion, and tamas being the mode of ignorance. So these forces, they exist in each and every individual. They support and intermingle with one another, these forces. The Sankhya Karika states that they are as closely related as are the flame, the oil, rather, the wick, the oil, and the flame of a lamp. That's how closely connected they are. And even though all these three forces exist within every individual simultaneously, one is always predominant, or one predominates the other two. So when tamas prevails us, then we lack incentive and our thoughts are not good. Our thoughts are bad. We have bad thoughts. When rajas predominates us, our consciousness, then we become active, selfish, ambitious, passionate. And when sattvic predominates us, then what happens? Then we become calm, serene, tranquil, and our thoughts, the thoughts of our mind, are also high and noble. So these three forces are like the three wrestlers, always seeking an opportunity, looking for an opportunity constantly to dominate one another in an arena. And this wrestling process goes on. It is an ongoing process in every individual. So these forces, they keep changing depending on the atmosphere or the surroundings that we are exposed to. So when two individuals are under the influence of one quality or one mode, for that matter, then we see bonding. We see that they are forming a friendship. They become friends. However, since there's no telling when a mode will change within a particular individual, at what time, how long it will last, we also see that if the quality of the forces change within two individuals and they vary or they contradict, then what happens? Then that friendship also ends. So how can we expect harmonious relationships to exist in the world, in our life, all the time? It is impossible. Suppose there's a couple, and both the husband and wife are governed by a different mode. The husband is insisting on going out to the movie to watch a movie, and the wife, on the other hand, is bent on going to a spiritual lecture. Now, neither of them give in, so what happens? They end up having a heated argument, and of course, both go their individual ways. So one ends up at the movies, and the other ends up in the lecture. Now, when they return from their respective, outings, and if they're still dominated by different modes or forces, then there's every chance of another lecture followed by a movie right in the house. Right in the house. The point is that arguments, these kinds of conflicts and arguments, transpire, are triggered in literally every household. But the outer appearances, what we see on the outside, deceive us into believing that perhaps peace and harmony could exist in the world. If every person, if everyone in the world were to tell the truth, whatever comes to their mind, whatever is in their heart, if they were to express their innermost feelings, then the entire world would be drowned in utter chaos. Utter chaos. But what normally happens is that within a family, there are adjustments. Or there are negotiations, you can say. So one person will give in, and then it's the other one's turn another time. That's kind of, how they manage. But if both refuse to agree, then inevitably there are conflicts, fights, arguments, disputes. That's what happens. Now, you may think that if both individuals were perhaps predominated by the same mode, maybe they could be friends. Yeah? Well, no. Why? Because even though they may be dominated by the same mode, the variation, the difference in intensity of the same mode can also lead to differences. Now, take the same example of the husband and wife stated earlier. Now, presume that both the husband and the wife, they both go to the lecture. The husband accompanies the wife to the lecture, but partway through, the husband gets bored because all he can hear is, remember Radhe Radhe. Chant Radhe Radhe. So he gets bored and he walks out, goes back home to watch TV. Now, even though they were predominated by the same sattvic quality, before they left home, the husband returned because the intensity of the mode, sattvic mode in the husband was proportionately less than that of the wife. So the clashes that we witness every day in our life, we experience, is because of the difference in the intensity of even the one mode. So it is no surprise. We shouldn't be surprised if there are differences within our life. If people don't agree or they disagree, it doesn't matter. It's no surprise at all. Because the fact still remains that no one can do anything for anyone without a selfish motive or without self-interest. It is impossible. So Sri Maharaji tells us that if we can embrace, just accept this reality, this fact of the world, something that's not only just written in the scriptures, but it is a matter of daily experience, then 50% of our problems will diminish, will be gone. They will be gone. Now think of an astonishing situation. Suppose there is a man who is locked up in a room for 7 days without food and water. One can only imagine how hungry this man could be at the end of the week. So after 7 days, he is served an incredible, delicious meal on golden plate with different kinds of delicacies and everything. And how happy this man could be, one can only imagine. Now, if somebody were to whisper in his ear, this food has poison in it, don't eat it, what will happen? The man will immediately let go. He will not eat it. And if he is asked, why aren't you eating this food? He'll say, well, there's poison in it, and if I eat it, I will die. It'll kill me, and I don't want to die now. So if the same man is asked, have you experienced poison? He'll say, what kind of question is that? If I had experienced it, I wouldn't be alive. Have you seen poison? Why would I? It is for somebody who wants to kill themselves or to kill somebody else, or for a doctor. But did you see anyone mix poison in that food? No, I didn't, but my friend told me. Now, just imagine the most foolish person in the world who has not experienced or even seen poison has so much faith in the words of his friend that even if he were given thousands of dollars, still he would not eat that food. So through this analogy, Sri Maharaji is illustrating an important point. In this line, Jute lat khat pati bani tani, nahi ab hu uparam. So this devotee is addressing Sri Krishna, talking to Sri Krishna in all humbleness, confiding in Sri Krishna and saying that life after life, when I reincarnated into a human form, I received so much abuse and torment and torture in so many lifetimes. But even so, I do not tire of drinking the poison of this world. I do not tire of drinking the poison of worldly enjoyment. Because even though I see it, I know it, and even though I experienced it, I still do not detach from the worldliness. Because my head is so steeped in the worldliness, it is so engrossed in the worldliness, that even that pain appears to be pleasurable. It's a negative attachment. It's a negative attachment. So I do not detach. Because with every painful experience, there is a corresponding hope for pleasure. Yes, I am going through pain right now, but I know that it will subside. So in that hope of it subsiding, finishing, ending, we latch on to the attachment to the world. Once a disciple asked his guru, why is it that my mind cannot meditate, engage in the remembrance of God? Why? Even though I try day and night, this wretched mind, it wanders off. I grab it, bring it back, and no sooner have I done so that it's gone again. So the guru smiled but did not respond to his question. A few days after, the guru asked the disciple to join him on his morning walk. So after they had walked a short distance, the Guru paused and, pointing to some excreta on the ground that had worms crawling all over it, the Guru asked the disciple, "Do you see that?" "Yes, Guruji." "I want you to pick up one of those worms with that stick and place it on that fragrant flower. Place it on that fragrant flower." He did as he was told. And no sooner had he done so, that the worm slithered off the flower through the moist grass of the forest floor back onto the excreta. So the Guruji asked the disciple, "Did you get your answer?" You were asking, right? So did you get your answer? And the disciple asked humbly, "Would you please explain, Guruji?" So the Guru said that you were asking and you have your answer. So conditioned to loving excrement, believing there's nothing better, this worm is conditioned to loving it because it believes that there is nothing better. In the same way, bound by Maya, your mind is accustomed to loving the hollow, illusionary pleasures of this world. In other words, the mind still believes that pleasure exists. So even in the midst of pain and misery, that hope is there. That one day I will experience that joy, the bliss that I have always thought it will come to me. So this devotee is saying to Sri Krishna that even though I have been abused and I continue to be abused, still I do not detach. Bhatkat Thaki Gaye Paam Nath ab
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 Padhat sunat janat manat pe
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 man tha हठ बाम नाथ अब
मन ठानत हठ बाम नाथ अब
मन ठानत हठ बाम नाथ अब
मन ठानत हठ बाम नाथ
भटकत भटकत थकी गए पाम नाथ अब
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 वेद शास्त्र पढ़ा सुना गोविंद राधे कि नाही माना किंतु नाही माना तू मोही मनवा दे पढ़ा सुना समझा गोविंद राधे मन ने न माना अब तू ही मनवा दे जानत मानत भी गोविंद राधे किंतु परंतु मन फिर भी लगा दे। राधा गोविंद गीत। Oh Shri Krishna, even though I have Veda Shastra, read, studied the Vedas and the scriptures, and even understood, but I never accepted the instructions within them. I understood, but never accepted. So please grace me so that I may accept. पढ़ा सुना समझाया. I not only read and heard, but I also explained it. I shared the knowledge among people, but I myself, my mind was always resisting the knowledge within the scriptures. So please grace me so that my mind can accept the knowledge. And even though I know it and I also accept it. But my mind is so deceptive. It is full of doubts, ifs and buts, and doesn't allow me to pursue sadhana and bhakti. So, O Shri Krishna, I beg you, I beg your grace. Please grace me. Once Shri Maharaji was asked a question. Despite understanding the knowledge, why is it that we don't implement it in daily practical life? Even though we understand it, and yet we continue making mistakes, continue committing mistakes. So the answer that Shri Maharaji gave was that hearing, listening to theoretical knowledge is not known as understanding. It is not knowingness in the true sense. Knowledge is that which is implemented, which is assimilated in daily living. Otherwise, it is just dry knowledge. It is a mere deception. Shri Maharaji says that the knowledge that I impart, the terminology that I use to impart the knowledge, yes, that you comprehend. You comprehend that knowledge, the principles. You apply your intellect and you understand it. However, the inherent meaning of the knowledge or the words or the knowledge, the philosophy that I impart is a different thing. So while your intellect understands the literal sense or accepts the literal sense of the knowledge or the philosophy, it is the heart that has to capture the implied essence of the knowledge or the words. And that is where the practice comes into play. Shri Maharaji says that the person who is trying or attempting to apply that or practice that, or put it into daily living or incorporate it into daily practical living, it means that they have not understood the knowledge. Because once the knowledge is understood in the true sense, then nothing needs to be done beyond that. So Shri Maharaji gave an example. Just like a smoker, if a smoker realizes that smoking is equivalent to putting poison in the body, it is detrimental to health, then what will happen? That cigarette that he's holding, that's half-burning cigarette, will fall from his hand in that very exact moment. And beyond that, he will not entertain the thought of even putting that cigarette back into his mouth. It's done. He got the knowledge. However, conversely, if the same person says, okay, now I understand. I will attempt to renounce cigarettes. I will vow to renounce cigarettes because I will cut back on smoking cigarettes because I've been smoking for a number of years, so it is going to take me a long time. If that is what he says and thinks, then Sri Maharaji says that he does not understand. So, knowledge has to be applied, or knowledge has to be captured, or the actual science or the implied essence of the knowledge has to be captured. Sri Maharaji says that when you listen to me, you nod your heads in agreement. And you can also be heard praising my lectures and talking highly. Oh, that lecture of Maharaj, it was so incredible. You know, I know it. I remember, I really understand that lecture. Maharaji says, no, you don't. It's just a false appearance of your understanding. You believe that you understand it. But true understanding comes from cultivating that knowledge. It comes from cultivating it. And when you cultivate it by way of practice, which is why Sri Maharaji repeatedly emphasizes the practice of Rup Dhyan. So when we employ that practice, when we apply that, when we do that sadhana, then the knowledge that we have heard will become solidified. It will become practical. It will become an experience. And the literal sense of that knowledge will cease thereafter. But until we experience that knowledge, it is not considered true understanding. It has to be experienced. Just like a housewife, she goes out to the library and brings back a whole stack of books on cooking because she doesn't know how to cook. And what does she do? She just keeps flipping the pages and, okay, this is how you make halwa and samosa and chole and bhatura and all. But she makes no effort to turn on the burner, follow the recipe, cook the food. Then that dry knowledge, what is that good for? It's not good for anything. So, Sri Maharaji tells us that simply listening to his knowledge is not considered understanding until and unless it is put into practice. We have to imbibe that knowledge, embrace that knowledge, digest it in our heart by way of practice. And only then we can claim that we actually understand the true essence of Sri Maharaji's philosophy. And that practice is what you all are doing every day when we sit here in the sadhana hall and practice that sadhana by means of Rup Dhyan. So this devotee is saying to Shri Krishna, Padhat Sunat. I've read, I've heard, I know, I accept. But even so, my crooked mind, my deceptive mind is obstinately attached to the world. So Sri Maharaji explains that unless we divert our mind from the world by way of practice, it is always going to obsess. It is always going to be infatuated with the world. So 2 lines are remaining. Tomorrow is my 4th and last lecture of this series, and I will continue with the explanation tomorrow. Shrimat Sadguru Sarkar ki, Shrimat Yugal Sarkar ki, Jai Jai Shri Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe.